All right, welcome to LionSide Chat. We'll just get started in a second if you want to check your audio device. And we actually will have the chat open for this chat. It says the chat here is disabled, but we'll get started here in just a minute. So welcome and hang tight for just a second.
Yay, Alex showed up. Thanks for coming, Alex. People are logging in. I like it.
All right, I will do my quick introduction and then we'll get started. So welcome to Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. This is our Majorly Prepared series. Come on in, welcome to our campus. We're so glad that you could join us. My name is Dr. Ryan Hasser. I'm one of the three LionSide Chat moderators working with Don Pfeiffer-Wrights and Sonia De La Cueto. Before we get started, just wanted to give you a few reminders that you feel free to submit question and answers through our Q&A here in the chat. And actually, the chat feature will be open. Our leads today here, Dr. Shibley and Dr. DiAngelo, has requested the chat box, so they might be using some of that information for the presentation. So once the presentation concludes, we will facilitate a discussion with the folks here that are facilitating the session. And we are recording today's session, so you can always revisit the topic and share the experiences. We post these on YouTube after the fact. So with that, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Ike Shibley, who will introduce the rest of the panelists, talking about science and health professionals and the opportunities that Penn State Berks gives to students in those fields. And I see amazing students here, the current and past, that have lots of experiences to talk about. So I'm eager and excited to hear what they have to share. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Shibley, and thanks for bringing us this LionSide Chat.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So thank you, students, the ones who just logged in. I'm going to introduce the students that are here. I'd like this to be as informal as possible. I'm going to go around and ask each of our students to introduce themselves, and then Justin and I just have a series of questions that we'll ask, but participants, that's why we left the chat window open. This is not a typical show and tell. So I will introduce, I'll let these folks wave. There are three current students that we invited who are all in various stages of their academic career and who can talk about what it's like to prepare for the health profession. So Safi Sindar is here. Maddie Hahn is here. And Taj Morales, who doesn't have his camera on, is here. Say hi, Taj. Maybe.
He said he was starting another meeting and he'll be right with us. So
oh, okay.
He'll be right
here. We also have someone popping in a little later. She had a lab this morning, but we have three alumni here. So Justin and I are kind of happy because this gives us a really good opportunity to catch up with former students. Jackie Kanaski is in her third year of veterinary school, and I'll let her tell you about that. Eric Avis is in his first year of medical school. Time expands and contracts in weird ways. Taj, wave, I introduced you already. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with the students, is just tell us a little about yourself, where you are in your career, and what you hope to do. So let's start with the current students, and I'm just going with the way they are on my screen. So Safi, I'll let you start.
Hi everyone, my name is Safi Sindar. I am a second-year student. I'm a biology major, the genetic and developmental option, and I hope to get a minor in chemistry. I plan to go to medical school, and I just ordered my MCAT prep books today, so I'm very excited to do that.
All right. Maddie, you want to say hi?
Yeah, so I'm Maddie Hahn. I am a senior. This is my last semester, so I'm really excited. It's almost over. Yeah. I intend to go to PA school, hopefully within the next year or two. But currently I am enrolled in a EMT program that I will be completing over the summer to get my patient care hours before I can do that. Yeah.
Thanks. And Taj.
Hi, everyone. I am Taj Morales. I'm a senior biochem molecular bio major here at Berks, doing the molecular bio option. So I see Dr. D a lot in a lot of the different courses. And after I graduate, I'm looking to do some more public health related research and projects. A lot of what I actually do now is more community health based in the local Hispanic and Latino community in Reading.
So three different students that have different goals. That's why we invited them. We also invited them because they're all pretty personable and are okay on camera. So our alum, our illustrious alum, Jackie, you want to tell us about your vet experience and life?
Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Jackie Kanaski. I graduated from Penn State Berks in 2018, and I am currently in my third year of veterinary school out here at Iowa State University. And I'm starting rotations next month, so that's exciting. Is there anything else you want me to say, or?
Yeah, I guess we'll get into specifics as we go along because I want you to explain rotations, but
Okay,
let's let Eric introduce himself because he's chomping at the bits.
What was your major when you were at Penn State?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I majored in biology, the genetics and developmental option.
All right, Avis.
Let's do it. So hi everyone, I'm Eric. I'm actually going towards the end of my first year at the Virginia College of Osteopathic Medicine down in Blacksburg, Virginia. I can see Virginia Tech literally right outside my window. I graduated from Penn State Berks in 2019 with a biochemistry and molecular biology degree. And yeah, is that it?
Well, you have a more interesting history than that. Because you're right, you came back to school a little later.
Oh, you want me to go into like my whole background? Like
a little bit. You have, right, you're the, other than DiAngelo and I think you're the oldest member.
Okay. All right, I'll give a little bit more into my background.
All right.
So out of high school, joined the Marines, active duty, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, spent some time in Japan, got out, went to Penn State. And while I was at Penn State, I joined the National Guard as a combat medic to kind of progress my healthcare and my patient needs and my, just sort of that whole thing to make me a more well-rounded applicant. While I was at Penn State Berks, I participated in Dr. DiAngelo's research lab and did some fun stuff there with that. And we've got the paper coming out here soon, so I can't wait. Took a gap year, worked as a medical assistant before being accepted into school. So it's been a different path. It's been longer, but it's getting me to my point where I needed to be.
And the only reason I asked you to do that is because I think some students feel obligated to go right from undergrad into some kind of professional program. And while that's certainly okay, it is by no means the only route to get into a health professions. Sometimes students will do things like take a gap year to work, like as an EMT, work as a certified nurse assistant if they're going to PA school to get some of their patient contact hours. But sometimes, right, Eric was a vet who took a gap year. One of our former students who's at Drexel didn't get in the first time and worked at a pharmaceutical company for a year and then reapplied and got in. So it's not always a straightforward path the way going to undergrad is. Usually undergrad, you have a few choices. And
in fact, that seems to becoming more popular or more common, I guess, especially for medical school. I think the average age of the starting classes nationally is 26, right? So that means that you aren't having as many students coming right from their graduating undergrad and going into medical school. So, so that's something to keep in mind for sure.
So and you guys can just bounce in. I don't want to keep calling on you. Oh my God, it feels like class. But this is more for the current students. What made you decide to choose the health profession that you did?
I'll look at Taj raising his hand.
Go ahead,
Good
Tom.
class, Ike, and I was like, oh, looks like it's time. So for me, I actually was able to do an internship at the College of Medicine over the summer after my sophomore year, and was able to get exposed to a couple of different professions while I was there, doing some of the research in the biochem labs that they had there, as well as shadowing in the hematology oncology unit. And for me, I actually encountered public health while I was shadowing there. And again, having some experience being a Hispanic person and living in Reading and seeing some of the different disparities that exist there, it was just really interesting, and it just kind of blended well together to be able to see the misfortunes of some patients that they would experience in that setting, and then also look at factors that could contribute to it, which is what a lot of the work that I do now is based on. So I kind of use that initial experience to kind of guide me towards public health, and then use this past summer to really explore which avenue of public health I wanted to venture into.
Wow.
I'll go next. So when I was growing up, I was actually very fortunate. My high school offered a 4-program biomedical science program. So that's kind of how I got introduced into medicine and science and stuff like that. And then to me, my desire to go into the medical field comes from more of a personal light rather than just, exposure. Health has been a really big factor of my life, specifically pertaining to my sister. She has struggled with mental health for years, and I found myself, in mental hospitals and regular hospitals for about 5 years, and it was consistent, right? It was every other month, so on and so forth. I know it sounds really sad, but the output of it is medicine to me isn't necessarily just, helping people, yes, but it's improving the quality of life. And if it wasn't for medical professionals and their support for my sister, her quality of life would not have improved, or at least not as fast as it did. And so that just kind of drove me to be someone for somebody else who potentially could be going through the same thing. So, yeah.
Wow, thanks. This is good for Eric to hear, so that, right, he actually wants to help people. All right, Safi. See, I am calling on people because.
So, well, my story is not as I don't know, deep. I don't know, I feel like I've always gravitated towards biology, and I've always enjoyed that subject, science in general. So, growing up is what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be a doctor. And I kind of stuck to that. And also, I'm from India, and the healthcare quality there is not what it is here. So I definitely want to make a difference here and in India too. So I hope that one day I can go back, not maybe permanently, but go back and help people and ensure, like Taj and Maddie said, improve the healthcare quality to people of all types, right? Not just a certain group. And I work at a nursing home, so I get exposed to people, right, I'm in the dementia unit, so I see those not patients, residents a lot, and that's kind of what made me lean towards neurology. So that's the plan. We'll see. I'm only in my 2nd year. Nothing is certain as of right now, but yes, that is kind of my story.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so now we get to hear from alum who are going to tell us how they got there, and then my follow-up is going to be, what do you think now that you're there? How good were your choices up to this point? Oh, and Jaslene's popping in. So before you guys answer, I'll let Jasleen say hi. Hi, Jasleen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on. Sorry I was late. I literally just got back from lab and the Philly traffic is not fun at this time.
So tell us where you are and what you're studying right now.
Okay, so I graduated from Berks in 2019, and then I took a year off and I worked at a local dental practice, and I applied to dental school during that year. And so now I'm actually at Temple and I'm finishing up my second semester here for dental school.
Awesome. So the question I asked for the 3 alum is how did you decide which of the professions you wanted to go to? And then I'll follow up with how's that work? I sound like Dr. Phil. How's that working out for you?
That's a good question. So I was kind of like back and forth. I knew I wanted to go into healthcare, but I really like couldn't decide like what I wanted to do. I was really back and forth for like the longest time about going to med school and whatnot. So when I was working with Dr. D actually in the lab, I feel like I knew I started to want to work with my hands more. So I was kind of in between like shadowing doctors and physicians and a lot of pediatricians. And then I was also shadowing some dentists as well. And I really like fell in love with dentistry and I knew like that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be able to work with my hands more. So that's kind of how I choose the dentistry over like just going to med school route. But yeah, coming to healthcare in general, that was a whole different story for me. Like I didn't originally start that way at all. Like I actually started wanting to go into business. And I finally switched over to my biochemistry degree. So, I mean, dentistry kind of ties in business too with science, which is another kind of cool thing. But yeah, it was a long process.
And now that you're surviving your first year,
Barely.
So good decision.
Yeah, it was. I feel like you're just catching me at like a very bad time because I'm wrapping up my spring semester right now. And like, I literally have like 3 tests a week. So it's like not a good time to catch me, but yeah, I think at the end of this year, like I can definitely say it was a good decision, but it's a lot of work for sure.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Eric or Jackie, you want to jump in?
Okay, so growing up, I loved animals. And yes, after 3 years of veterinary school, I still love animals, just not as much of the cows and the horses. We can do without that. And pigs are very loud. But yeah, so I always loved animals. But so when I got to Penn State Berks, I kind of was a little lost because there's a lot of negative connotations about getting into vet school. You know, it's very difficult. So I kind of psyched myself out a bit in the beginning, like my first 2 years. And then I had to sit down with another Penn State Berks professor, Dr. Zakowicz, and he was like, well, why not? Like, go for it. So he kind of gave me that kick in the butt that I needed to be like, oh no, yeah, I can do this. So I took his advice and I applied. I got, into a great animal hospital, which I can now say that I am officially employed when I am done and graduated. So I already have a job, which is awesome. And so I was very lucky enough that I got in right off the bat. And yeah, 3 years later, it was a lot of work, and it still is a lot of work having to take medicine, like all aspects of medicine, and then transferring that over multiple animal species is very difficult to do. But I'm still happy here. So it was a good choice. So
How do you like Iowa?
Well, there's a lot of corn and pigs, and it gets very cold, and there's not mountains to chop up all the wind, so it really like smacks you in the face in the morning and wakes you up. So there is no such thing as a good hair day here. So yeah.
All right, thanks. Mr. Avis, soon to be Dr. Avis. Well, not too soon, but
Yeah, still got a couple more years on that one. So like I said before, my path really hasn't been the most direct point. I had the idea as a kid to kind of like get into medicine, but I never really thought I was, smart enough or whatever, or maybe mature enough. So spent the 4 years in the Marines, and that kind of got me thinking. In high school, I've always liked the STEMs. I always actually envisioned myself to be probably more on the engineering side of things, but biology kind of did pique my interest a little bit more. So once I got out, went to Penn State, and then once I went through my combat medic training, I really liked the EMT healthcare aspect, the quick and fast pace with it. But I also liked biology, and I was still taking those general courses, so I started gravitating more and more to biochemistry. So that's when I kind of made that switch to go to medical school. Like that's going to be my drive. That's going to be what I do. I've always liked helping people. And you can talk to my grandma. Like I've always liked taking things apart and putting them back together. I'm a lot better at taking them apart than putting them back together, which I'm hoping to fix here in medical school. So we'll see about that one. But then along the way, you always question it. So like Dr. D knows there was, I think, a solid year. I think my senior year, I was like, do I want to go doctor or do I want to go PhD? Because I really like the labs, like working in the lab. I love being around it, like the information with it, but I still liked working with people. And there was a lot of back and forth with that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I chose to go to medical school. And now that I'm here, I will say it's very, very hard. I mean, I'm getting by just fine, but 3-4 tests a week mixed in with, either a practical in anatomy lab with the cadavers, or because I'm a student of osteopathic medicine, we do what's called OMM, which is I will get a lot of flack for saying this, but the easiest thing to compare it to is like chiropractic kind of stuff. So it's a lot of hands-on stuff with that. So we've got that going on all the time, and it's a lot, and there's not a whole lot of time to do, like at Berks, there's time to goof off and whatever. And with COVID, it's been a whole nother thing too, of like not making friends, all your classes are on Zoom, and we're slowly pulling out of that. So it's kind of like started medical school, not necessarily, I guess, at the wrong time for a pandemic to hit. So it's made things a little bit difficult with that, but I'm managing just fine. Berks has set me up really well with everything, taking care of it, knowing how to work, how to study. And even then that evolves as you go to medical school. So my first block, I did what Berks taught me, and it took a lot more work in terms of medical school. Block 2, I changed some things. And even I just finished my third block today for neurology, and that took a lot of adjusting in how you study. So I feel like studying in medical school is an ever learning process of just learning the study in itself, along with the information.
Can you talk a little about that? And also, right, Jasleen and Jackie can jump in too, but how has studying in professional school differ from studying undergrad?
So I feel like for me personally, it's the volume and density. When they, when you're talking to your advisors and they're saying, it's like learning by drinking through a fire hose. Like, they're not joking. It is. And let me see if I have one of my schedules around here. I'm in class from 8 a.m. to about 4, right? Almost daily, or lab. So it's a lot of getting that information. And then once you get back around to studying for it, you have to pick out what are the big things from it. What's the big takeaway? What's whatever, because in medical school, they expect you to be a geneticist. They expect you to be an embryologist. They expect you to be a neurologist and all these other things, but you have to pick out those fine details that, you're probably going to see on the exam, or that are going to be big, not just the minute stuff. Whereas like undergrad, it's very fine detailed information, I feel like, but it's spread out over a longer course. So you have more time to look over stuff like that. Medical school, you just have to be able to start identifying trends, what to look for, stuff like that.
I would also agree in just the immensity of the information that I have to know is beyond anything that I was mentally prepared for. So that was definitely an adjustment, and people told us like, oh, vet school is going to become your entire life. And that was no joke. It has become my entire life. There's no weekends, And now that I'm towards the end and I'm like doing surgeries and now, okay, patient care, you get a call, your cat has its collar in its mouth and it can't breathe. Okay, gotta run down to the hospital to go cut the collar out of my cat's mouth because cats do stupid things. So it's a lot of time management is very important. And I know we stress that at Penn State Berks as well, but that carries over into beyond. So that is what I think on.
I can add on too quick, just kind of bouncing off of what both Eric and Jackie said. I know at Berks, I'm not gonna lie, I used to like study maybe 3 to 4 days before an exam and like try and cram for sometimes. And I learned really quick that in dental school, like you cannot do that, or professional school. You really have to stay like on top of the material because of the immensity of it. So you learn really quickly that every day you're studying for the exam. There's going to be no like homework assignments or quizzes to kind of keep you on top of it, kind of like there is at Berks where they kind of force you to go ahead and review the material. But I'm learning really quick, like I've got to find my own ways to just every day, just like 15 to 30 minutes for certain topics just to review it, because it is that much. So it is an adjustment, but it's definitely doable. And yeah, you can, yeah, it's good.
So what I've heard, and actually Jackie told me this her first year of vet school, that, you know, a course like Bio 230, which is our intro cell and molecular course that we spend an entire semester covering, you know, molecules and cells, she covered in, 2 weeks in vet school, if even that, right? You know, we spend a whole year on biochemistry, right? You get through that in, a couple weeks, right? So it's just, think about a college course just crammed, right, into, a matter of weeks. And that's the pace of what you're covering.
Which is, right, I'm going to approach this as a pedagogical scholar. I'm still not convinced that the paradigm that is being used in these professional schools is all that effective, because when I talk to, go to my doctor and he finds out I'm a biochemist and an organic chemist, he's like, oh, I don't remember any of that. Like, oh, good. Well, it's good you really had to cram it all in when you were in school. So I feel for you guys, because I think day to day, once you're out, you have to be a learner more than you do a crammer. And right, I think you're going to adjust again afterwards once you start practicing, because I don't think my dentist goes through and like studies books on biochemistry to get ready for his day of work. But he's a really good dentist and he keeps up on everything, but he does it in a much less fire hosey way. Oh. And I think PA school is the same way. In fact, my daughter-in-law says that PA school takes medical school and tries to fit it in 2 years, right? 4 years. And it's like, oh, good. But as Jackie said, I think the theme is if you're going to go to professional school, there's not going to be a whole lot else that you're going to be doing during that time. It's sad, but it's an investment. You're investing in yourself. You're investing in doing good for your community and the world. So I think you've heard that it's kind of worth it. I want to go back. I don't want to ignore our current students. I'd like your reaction to some of this too, because I know you guys are still planning to get ready for professional school. How do you study now as you're getting ready?
I can go.
Okay.
Or Maddie.
And then we'll let Maddie go.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll go. All right, so studying for me is interesting. Well, I'm like one of those learners where I gravitate towards science, so I don't have to study a lot for my science courses, right? And that way I'm sort of auditory, where I hear it and I see it, and visual, or I hear it and I see some examples on the board and I'm like, okay, I'm good. Or maybe I'll rewrite my notes or something and I'm like, all right, I'm good, you know. But when it comes to like your other finicky courses, or it's like history or like psychology or other courses that, you know, I struggle with, English, um, for me, studying is more of a prolonged experience rather than a crammed experience. And I learned that quickly in high school as well. A lot of the AP courses that I took, right, we had to study every night for homework, and it was like mandatory. Like they graded our like homework studying. It was weird. Anyway, what I mean by that is basically I study for like 30 minutes a day after classes, right? For me, my classes right now are typically from around like 8 to like noon, and then I work, and then when I get home, I'll look at my stuff, maybe rewrite my notes, just read over some definitions, go over something quick, and I'll do that every single day leading up until an exam, instead of just like sitting down and really studying for it, you know, the night before. I do not learn that way at all. It goes in one ear, not the other. Not to say I haven't done it, sure, but it doesn't mean I retained anything. Specifically for like organic, whenever I was learning organic chemistry, me and a really good friend of mine, Caitlin Pasquarella, her and I would sit and we would talk and FaceTime and do like homework together and problems from class that we didn't understand. And that was like many times throughout the week. And I think that's the only course that I can say, like, I know that course, and it was from studying it so much. And then that brings up, you know, having friends to be there with you to go over and like have study sessions and stuff like that. I learn best also by teaching it to my friends. Even if I don't know it and I start talking about it and I'm trying to like remember myself and I'm saying it out loud, that helped a lot in 230. That, you know, that as well, that helped me a lot. So. Ike, you're muted. Ike, you're muted.
Thanks. I thought I hit the space bar. Anyway, oh, because I had it on anyway. Technology. Maddie's currently a peer mentor for organic chemistry. I think that's also a theme, that one of the ways to learn this material, to learn science, is to try to teach it to other people. Now, obviously, once you get to professional school, you're going to adjust that because you're trying to teach yourself. But yeah, Maddie's doing, I think she feels even more confident in organic chemistry because of the mentoring experience. And I don't want to embarrass her, but she's really good at it. So, all right, Safi, I did not mean to let Maddie go. I meant Maddie can go after you, but anyway.
Oh, no, you're fine. I don't have much to say, but no, I do spend a lot of time studying. Like school is kind of like my life. I work, but I don't work as much as Maddie and like some of the other kids in my, you know, grade. I only work like 16 hours maybe a week on the weekends. So I like do devote a lot of time to studying. I like to get things done early, like really early. So if I have a project like a month from now, like in Stat 484, Dr. Hassler's class, our project is due like May 6th or whatever, and I have it done. Like, you know, because I like getting things out of my way.
I can confirm that it's done.
So I can like focus on the things that, like my exams and stuff. And how I prepare for my exams is by going over the quizzes and sometimes rewatching the lectures. And Zoom has been so helpful with that, because sometimes you were, you know, writing notes when your teacher was teaching, but you didn't catch everything, right? Because sometimes teachers go fast. But watching the Zoom lectures again really helps me learn that stuff kind of again, but also because I initially knew a little bit, it solidifies it more in my brain. So okay, that was like how I study for exams and stuff. But I also make sure that like I write everything down So all the things that need to be done, and then like check it off every single day. Like I make a list, all these things that need to be done, all the exams that are coming up. Like, so I have like 2 exams, I think, next week, and I already reviewed for them this week, and I'm gonna review for them again this weekend. Um, and I think this kind of the way I study um, is different from some of the other kids because I actually came from India, and in India, like they really just hit you with all the material. Like I was only 13 when I moved here, so like I didn't have that much work, but they really like instill that value of hard work and work ethic, and like school is your life. Like you're not supposed to stray from that. So I mean, it's good to have like social interaction and stuff, but I would rather just work on my homework, which is probably not healthy, but maybe it'll prepare me for medical school now. So yeah, sorry, I talked a lot. I don't know if it was helpful, but
That was your, you don't have to be so self-effacing. Safi also was a mentor in the fall for the first year students. So she was in bioethics and she did, right, these kind of experiences, I think, not only in science classes, but also the social aspect that several people have talked about, I think is critically important.
So the watching recordings is actually an important point because, well, even pre-COVID, that was a big thing that in medical schools, at least, right? That they would record, even if everybody was in person, right? You would be in the auditorium listening to a lecture, they'd record it. So you could go back and you could reference all of those recordings. And so a lot of students would just sort of go to them directly, right? To allow you to pick up that information if you need to get more, you need to hear it again, or if you slept in and didn't go to class, right? You could go and get that information. So yes, that's something that medical schools, at least I know, do regularly.
It's an interesting aspect of the pandemic because I think there's a cohort of students who feel like they're actually learning more deeply because of the recordings. Dr. Wong just asked me if there was a way that we could record all the time, if IT can set up something in the classroom, because students seem to want that, especially dedicated students, that they want to go back and review if they miss something to find that part of the lecture. So I don't know, the last year has been one of the most intriguing from a pedagogical perspective, because we've seen students who have really not adjusted well to Zoom. And then we have students who are finding that it has actually helped them deepen their learning. So we have some thinking to do as we move forward as educators, at least. But Taj, I started talking. Tell us how you study.
No, it's okay. A lot of it is similar to what Safi and Madison were talking about. I would say in the beginning of college, it might have been where, Gen Chem, okay, coming out, yeah, I can study the night before, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And even organic, like that was a stressful year. So even then, sometimes like I would study the mechanisms and visually it was very helpful. And when you get to organic chemistry, all of you that are listening, you will understand. And Jackie was actually my TA in general chemistry. And she said, just know the mechanisms and you'll be fine. So that's what I use going into organic. And heading into my junior and senior year, though, where I had Dr. DiAngelo a lot for some of the more detailed classes, like some of the biochem courses, where you have a lot of pathways, you have a lot of things happening. The visuals were definitely helpful because, again, like you have different molecules doing a bunch of different things all over the map, but also asking questions. And I think, Madison, you talked about this a little bit too, like explaining it to people or practicing. That was what was most helpful for me. And even now I'm taking immunology with Dr. DiAngelo, and that's what I do to study. Is I oftentimes, I do take, like Jesleen mentioned, like I'm studying 3 or 4 days beforehand at this point, just to kind of get ahead of the game, because immunology, I feel like, is one of the courses where there is a lot of information, and I'm sure it doesn't, exactly quite touch the surface of what, Eric, you'll probably learn from immunology, but it is a lot of information. And it's a different type of course because it's so much information, and because immunology is one of the courses that we haven't had a ton of experience in up to this point in the degree. So it's so brand new, and there's so much to know that I am taking, what I would have been able to do before, maybe 2 or 3 days before. Now I'm studying like that entire week. I just block off of like every day I'm doing a different part of it because there's so much to know. And it's weird because I was the type of person where, again, it was, maybe a day or two beforehand, I'd be like, okay, let me start asking myself some questions. And now I'm like, 5 days before, I'm going to take this section and review it. And then I'm going to go through questions. And then the next day I'm going to do this one. And then every day I kind of sprinkle in some questions that I'm doing so that the last day I just have as review, but I'm not overwhelming myself with information that I need to, know for the first time before an exam, because then again, it just kind of goes in and comes out with the other ear. So that's kind of how I study. It's a lot of, when we did have the Zoom recordings for that course, it was very helpful. And even now being in person, that we're able to do, I'm taking so many notes and having workshops where we are working together as a group. And we can see what each other, what everybody else is putting down, and kind of say like, oh, I might add this to it, or oh, you forgot this point, or be able to ask those questions is very, very helpful. So that's kind of what I do. I would say too, just keep in mind it's going to change over your time, in college, and I'm sure whenever you pursue the professional medical graduate studies, it's going to change from what you were doing before. So don't be afraid if it does change, or if you find yourself doing something different. And also, don't get too comfortable, and investigate new strategies, because if it changed now, I'm sure in the next few years it's going to change even more.
I'll point out that we had a workshop 2 weeks ago with someone who was an alum who's now a senior scientist at Eurofins, and he had someone from HR there, and someone asked, like, what would an ideal candidate be for a job? And his answer was adaptability, which I'm hearing from all of you, right? You need to adapt to different courses, sometimes history or English, sometimes immunology, sometimes first and second year or first and second semester, different courses. So adaptability seems to be a skill that I don't have any magic way to tell you how to become more adaptable, but I want to make sure that attendees, no one's asked a question. Please type something in the chat. These guys, you have a wealth of resources here. These are 6 really smart, pleasant students who I think will answer your questions.
Can I ask a question to the alums? All
Yeah.
right, so this is a sort of a 2-parter. I want you to think about one thing that you did at Berks. So maybe it was a course you took, maybe it was some experience you did that you found was very helpful to you when you went to dental school, med school, vet school. And then something you wish you would have done, right? That would have helped you now that you've been through a little bit of your dental school, med school, vet school.
I think I got this. So honestly, I think probably the most helpful course or thing was the metabolism course, Dr. DiAngelo, just the higher level, holding students accountable, treating it as if it's not just, a senior course in undergrad, but like how you would teach other students from other programs. I think that gave a lot of confidence and a realistic look into what I was running into. I think my shortcomings, not only with this class, but pretty much overall, was the failure to look over this material multiple times. So that failure to retain it long term, I have to go back and refresh myself on it, and I'll catch up on it because I've seen it before, but I would rather have it a little bit more to the surface, readily, obtainable when I need to recall it, rather than look at stuff over, the night before or something like that. So I think that's pretty much it.
But you feel like your biochemistry degree, your B&B degree provided you with the background that you needed.
Oh, absolutely. We just did musculoskeletal last block, smoked through that between, physiology, biochemistry, all that. I didn't really have an issue with it. Neuro this block overall has just been a complete challenge. And I really wish I would have took something related to that. Cause this was a very, very difficult, 12 weeks.
I've heard that about neuro, and I've heard that about immunology, actually. Like those are
Yeah.
two things that are foreign to a lot of students who go to medical school. If you haven't taken those courses as an undergrad, then it's like,
Right. I couldn't imagine taking, because we do immunology. So they at VCOM, the first block is get everyone on the same level, do all the STEM classes to kind of get everyone, because everyone's from a different walk of life. And immunology, microbiology, all those courses are there. And I could not imagine getting through any of those courses, especially immunology, without having taken it in the past.
I just wanted to add on to that too, actually. I think that the B&B program at Berks and the biology one, I think it really does set you up well for any professional school. Just for me personally, I think that to add on, I wish I would have taken something like anatomy, which isn't in the B&B curriculum, but it was kind of like a fault of mine too, just because I didn't know what path I wanted to take at the moment. So a lot of these schools or programs, I should say, they do have like different prerequisite requirements that may not quite all fall in the B&B like I guess degree layout. But most of it does, but just like those extra classes, sometimes it'd be nice to have that. Like I said, like anatomy would have helped. Histology was the first class I took for one of my first like harder classes I took, and that one was pretty tough as well. So I think just having that anatomy would have helped. It's not impossible. You can definitely do it. Like I'm making it through, and I'm gonna pass probably. But yeah, just probably anatomy is one that I wish I would have kind of taken on the side.
Which is weird because there's not a science degree that really requires anatomy.
Yeah, I kind of never understood that, but it does make sense in a way. I guess if I would have went like kines or something, it would have helped. But then again, that would have had to change my whole path. So I don't know.
And yeah, branching off of both Eric and Jasleen, the B&B program is amazing. I was with both Dr. Shibley and with Dr. DiAngelo, and for the biochem course, and I am so happy that I took that, because that is like the basis of life almost. So I mean, without metabolism, your cells can't function. And frequently, even now in my toxic plant class that I'm in right now, we still went over something that was related to cell metabolism. So I'm like, I remember that, you know. So, but something that I also wish that I took was immunology. I did not take that in undergrad, and that would have been nice to have at least a background information on. However, I have, great professors here who helped me along the way, because I did need it, but it all worked out. But I guess my suggestion was don't have tunnel vision. Definitely branch out, take Dr. Shibley's neuro class, which I did, and I still use the information today. And yes, it still applies to cows and giraffes and elephants, believe it or not. So just don't go in there thinking I'm only going to do this. Take all the classes, because you never know what path you're going to take or what is going to be useful in different areas of your career.
So there's a question from the attendees, and this is for everyone because current students as well. What's the best way to get direct patient care hours while you're in school?
Is it okay if I take, only because I don't, for my career path, I don't have too much to do with this, but I will say my brother is a PA student right now at the College of Medicine for Penn State. And actually with my internship, I was able to get some. So for him, again, like he took a year off or a year or two off in between going to PA school. And he worked at our local St. Joseph's Hospital, and he became a phlebotomist there. He used his position as a data abstractor because he was actually an engineering student to then get into the phlebotomy program there, and was a phlebotomist for about a year or so, and was able to get his hours that way. And in terms, again, not knowing the difference between it's just contact or care, I know for me, I was able to get some additional shadowing hours. So if it pertains to shadowing while I was doing research. So if you get a position where you might have a different position at in a health setting, whether that be at a hospital, doing research in a lab somewhere, ask and see what they would be willing to do. Because a lot of times in those settings, if you're working with samples that you might have to do research on, and those are patient samples, you might already have clearances and training done that you would need to undergo a shadowing process, especially in a health system. So all they can do is say no. So might as well ask and find out what they can do for you.
Yeah, I'll say I've got some other friends that have done the phlebotomist thing at the St. Joe's, and I think that's super helpful as far as getting hours because they're really flexible. St. Joe's is like 2 exits down from Penn State Berks. For me, I think taking a gap year is not. I'm not going to say it's a strong recommendation, but with the average accepted age of like medical students getting in, taking at least a gap year to do some work is great. The dermatology office I worked at over in Exeter. Sorry, it's been a while. Fried brain. I think that was probably my best thing at seeing firsthand. I think because I got to do a lot of the assisting with procedures, numbing, sterilizing fields, preparing for surgeries, stuff like that. And I think that set me up a little bit better now because we have these things called standardized patients where we interact with, acting patients. I think my experience with that put me ahead rather than if I were just to go shadow or just become a scribe in the ER. Something more hands-on is what I would recommend, because if you get hours on paper, it's hours on paper, but it's the personal experience, the personal takeaway from that and what you can bring along when you go to that medical school that's going to benefit you. So use it to your advantage.
I was actually just going to add on to that as well. So I also took a year off. So kind of like side noting too at the same time. But that gap year was something like I really dreaded doing. Like I really didn't want to do that at all. I wanted to go just straight into school. But honestly, that gap year proved to be very, very informative. I worked at a practice in Wyomissing there. I just worked at the front desk. I could have also become a dental assistant if I wanted to. I just needed an X-ray certification. But instead of doing that, I decided to work at the front desk, take that opportunity. And I ended up learning a lot, just working at the front desk. And then from there, I was actually able to work in sterilization. So I got to learn a lot about the types of tools that we use in dentistry. And then also just patient experience and just dealing with problems at the front desk and also learning a lot about insurances, which are really tough. So I think that getting that backside and the business side of it is going to really help me come my 3rd and 4th year when I get into clinic. So a gap year is really helpful, but if you don't want to take a gap year and if you don't have to, you can always also just shadow in the summer or maybe try to get a job over the summer that's relevant. So it was nice to get paid and get hours at the same time if you can, but I know some schools don't accept that, but just another option.
And Maddie, where are you getting your EMT?
Yeah, I was just about to start talking about that. So I am getting my EMT certification from the Reading Hospital, which is, it's only about like 15 minutes down the street from Berks. And the EMT program, you can actually get in and complete as long as you're above the age of 16. So if you're a full-time college student, right, through the semester might be a little difficult because sometimes when they want to hire EMTs, it's, full-time position, 60-hour work weeks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know personally how flexible they can be with you. Maybe if you sit down and have a chat with them before they hire you and just say, hey, I'm a full-time student, I can only work like this amount of hours a week. Maybe have, if you work your schedule, so that way you have like a Tuesday and a Thursday where you have no classes, right? You could work those days, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone keeps talking about gap years, which is what I decided to do because for PA schools specifically, I know that the average acceptance age, which I think Eric was kind of touching base on, is right. It's people who have been in the medical field for 5+ years, who have had so much hands-on experience. Sometimes it's people who have been working for the hospital for however many years, and they're just like, hey, I want to extend my learning, should I apply? And their friend's the PA programmer, blah, blah, blah. So it's challenging to get in, but it's not impossible, right? And a gap year, if anything, it doesn't look negative on a resume. It actually looks good, right? They want to see that you're taking that extra time to really devote to that practice rather than trying to rush in and be underprepared. So there's that.
And I know we're running short of time. This went really fast. One of the things that I keep hearing from all our panelists is that the only real negative is not having information. You guys are going to have it as pre-professional students. Those of you who are attending here, you got to be proactive. You've got to be deliberate. Things are not going to fall in your lap. People are not going to come up to you and say, hey, would you like to come work here? Would you like to do an internship here? Would you like to volunteer here? You've got to get out there and you're going to have to interact with people. And everyone has slightly different stories. I don't know that there's a single best. That was the question. Is there a best way to achieve this, these patient hours? I don't think, based on these answers and what I think Justin and I have seen, there's not a single right way to get there. And there's not even a single right way for you. You got to kind of make your own way as you go. And just as I think it was Eric who said, right, you learn as you go, and you learn to change your study habits if things aren't working well. If you don't have an internship, try to find one. If you haven't gotten patient contact hours, start pounding the pavement and get out there and knock on some doors. So, all right. Dr. Hassler, I think I can turn it back over to you as we wrap up.
Yep, that was amazing. I just want to, close out here. Thank you, Ike and Justin and the wonderful students and alumni. I mean, the one thing I took away is clearly, and I think you all agree, you can come here to Berks, you can stay at Berks all 4 years, and you can have these amazing opportunities that you can get the degree here at Berks and look at the students who are pursuing those degrees and who are now alumni that are out in the fields at these professional schools. So it's possible, it's more than possible, it's frequent. We have a ton of students over the 10 years I've been at Berks who have gone to medical school, who have gone to dentistry school that you've heard just a small sample of here today. So thanks to everybody for sharing your information. Thanks to everybody who's attended here today. As you click out of our webinar, we will have a survey that we ask you to just take a minute to complete. It helps us in future planning for some of these seminars. You're encouraged to reach out to us at LionSide Chat if you have any questions here on our screen. Next week, we have 3 chats for current students. On Monday, we're doing a session on alternative grading. Next Wednesday is National Biomechanics Day. And then next Friday, we have another session like this, but on the more business side, the accounting side. So be sure to come back, meet with us, other faculty, staff, and students here at Berks. And thanks for being part of today's conversation. So stay safe, Berks and beyond. This is LionSide Chat signing off until next time. Thanks, everybody. Take care.